Hello everyone, welcome to Dolphin's Barn Church. Thank you for logging on. You're very welcome. For the past few years, a group of professional actors from stage and screen have performed a reading of A Christmas Carol on the Sunday just before Christmas. We've done it to raise funds for the Peter McVerry Trust. You will hear Peter later in this recording. But the actors themselves have given of their time once again. They've all recorded the piece individually, and we've managed to stitch them together into a performance that I hope you will enjoy. And maybe next Christmas we will see each other in person. God bless you all.
Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire, secret and self-contained and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheeks, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows, and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence on Scrooge. No warmth could warm, nor wintry weather chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him. The heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast of the advantage over him in only one respect. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him on the street to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of Scrooge. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, would tug their owners into doorways and up courts, and then would wag their tails as though they said, "No eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master." But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance, was what the knowing ones call nuts to Scrooge.
It's December. Presents are lunatics. Spoons, napkins, knives, writing paper, classy jars of delicious jam. I sent you nothing but my small books. I must seem as tight as a mackerel's arse on a winter's night, and that's watertight. But I despise the treacherous generosity of presents. Presents are like hooks. The greedy fish is fooled by the fly he swallows. In refusing to give presents to rich friends, the poor man shows true generosity.
From Worshipper and Worshipped by Carole Hope. The story of Father Willie Doyle, an Irish padre of the Great War and chaplain to the forces, 1915 to 1917. It's Christmas, 1916. Midnight Mass in the convent at Locre, West Vlaanderen, Belgium. Father Willie Doyle recounts. I reached the convent a bit tired, intending to have a rest before Mass, but found a string of the boys awaiting my arrival, determined that they at least would not be left out in the cold. I was kept hard at it, hearing confessions till the stroke of 12, and seldom had a more fruitful or consoling couple of hours. The love of the little babe of Bethlehem, softening hearts, which all the terrors of war had failed to touch. I sang the Mass, the girls' choir doing the needful. One of the Tommies from Dolphin's barn sang the Adeste beautifully, with just a touch of the sweet Dublin accent to remind us of home, sweet home. The whole congregation joining the chorus. It was a curious contrast. The chapel packed with men and officers, almost strangely quiet and reverent. The nuns were particularly struck by this, praying and singing most devoutly, whilst the big tears ran down many a rough cheek. Outside, the cannons boomed and the machine guns spat out a hail of lead. Peace and goodwill, hatred and bloodshed. It was a midnight Mass none of us will ever forget, and will certainly live in our memories for many a year.
Hello and happy Christmas to each of you. Behind me is Father Francis Gleeson from Templemore in County Tipperary. He became chaplain to the 2nd Battalion of the Royal Munster Fusiliers, and here he is giving them general absolution before a major battle in 1915 in the First World War. He later returned to Dublin and became parish priest of St. Catherine's in Meath Street, just up the road here. Father Francis died in 1959. Before I introduce and sing a song, I'd like to spend a moment with Tom Hickey. Tom died on May Day, the 1st of May this year. And in 2018 and 2019 here, he wonderfully depicted the part of Marley in A Christmas Carol. Tom, we miss your presence, your giftedness, your occasional outrageous sense of fun and laughter, your friendship, and much more. May you rest eternally. I know that you love this song and its sentiments, and from us, this is for you, Tom. Composed by Cormac McConnell, Christmas 1914. 1914 on Christmas Day, on the Western Front the guns all died away, and lying on the mud and bags of sand, the Germans sang of peace from no man's land. He had a tenor voice so pure and true, The words were strange, yet every note we knew, soaring o'er the living, dead and damned. Germans sang of peace from no man's land. Silent night, no cannons roll. A King of peace is born forevermore. All's calm, all's bright, all brothers hand in hand. In 1914 in no man's land. They left their trenches and we left ours. Beneath tin hats the smiles bloomed like wildflowers, with photo cigarettes and tots of wine. We built a soldier's peace on the front line. Their singer was a lad of 21. We begged another song before the dawn, and lying on the mud and blood and fear, he sang again the song we longed to hear. Silent night, no cannons roll. A King of peace is born forevermore. All's calm, all's bright, all brothers hand in hand. In 1914 in no man's land. And in the morning all the guns boomed in the rain. And we killed them and they killed us again, with bayonets, bomb, bullet, gas and flame. And neither we nor they at all to blame. There was heavy fighting right throughout the day. For one night's peace we bloodily did pay. That night they charged, we fought them hand to hand. And I killed the boy who sang in no man's land. Oh, silent night, no cannons roll. A King of peace is born forevermore. All's calm, all's bright, all brothers hand in hand. And that young soldier sings, while the captains and all their kings bring no man's land, sleep in heavenly peace.
A cold coming we had of it. Just the worst time of year for a journey, and such a long journey. The ways deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter. And the camels galled, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces, the silken girls bringing sherbet. Then the camel men, cursing and grumbling, and running away, and wanting their liquor and women. And the night fires going out, and the lack of shelters, the cities hostile, and the towns unfriendly. the villages dirty, and charging high prices. A hard time we had of it. At the end, we preferred to travel light, sleeping in snatches, with the voices ringing in our ears saying, this was all folly. Then at dawn, we came down to a temperate valley, wet, below the snow line, smelling of vegetation, and a running stream, and a watermill beating in the darkness, and 3 trees on the low sky, and an old white horse galloped away in the meadow. Then we came to a tavern with vine leaves over the lintel, 6 hands at an open door dicing for pieces of silver, and feet kicking the empty wineskins. But there was no information. And so we continued. And arriving at evening, not a moment too soon, finding the place, it was, you may say, satisfactory. All this was a long time ago, I remember, and I would do it again. But set down this. Were we led all that way for birth or death? There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence and no doubt. I had seen birth and death, but had thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old dispensation, with an alien people clutching their gods. I should be glad of another death.
Christmas, the celebration of the birth of light. In the middle of the darkest time of the year, lightness, laughter, family and friends, exchange of gifts to show love and appreciation. For many, it is the best time of the year. Except sometimes it just doesn't feel like that. Sometimes it can be hard to jump up into all that joy. Sometimes we're so preoccupied with grief that even just smiling and saying hello can feel like a challenge. I have a friend who lives with depression, and at this time of year, he just wants to hibernate like a squirrel, resting in some quiet corner until the razzle-dazzle of Christmas has passed, and Christ comes more quietly, as Patrick Kavanagh put it, with a January flower. But we can't always do that. Sometimes we do the whole sparkle and dance no matter what we're feeling. Some of the merriest people standing around the Christmas trees are those who struggled hardest to be there. They're missing loved ones who are far away. They're worrying about keeping a roof over their heads or about finding a roof over their heads. They're dealing with illnesses and difficult relationships. They're tired from having worked so hard in the weeks coming up to Christmas. Or they're like my friend who lives with depression, just about managing to smile. For them especially, may this season of light bring peace. And for those who feel only delight that we've reached another Christmas, May this season of light also bring peace. We're all in this together, even if it feels at times like we're not. Everyone knows loss and fear and loneliness and helplessness and frustration. What I wish everyone also knew was that things will find balance again. We've seen it before. We've lived it before. Everyone knows that there will come a moment when the sun rises and something, some tiny thing, will make them want to smile again. We won't know how it happened, but darkness will have yielded to light. So, may we be kind this Christmas to the world and to ourselves. May we look out for each other. May we love and feel loved. And however it is for each of us this Christmas, may we keep on keeping on, doing our best, and smiling if we can when those nearest to us need us to. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right. A poem by Derek Mahon. How should I not be glad to contemplate the clouds clearing beyond the dormer window and a high tide reflected on the ceiling? There will be dying. There will be dying. But there is no need to go into that. The poems flow from the hand unbidden, and the hidden source is the watchful heart. The sun rises in spite of everything, and the far cities are beautiful and bright. I lie here in a riot of sunlight, watching the day break and the clouds flying. Everything is going to be all right. Everything is going to be all right.
Before the Ice is in the Pot by Emily Dickinson. Before the ice is in the pools, before the skaters go, or any check at nightfall is tarnished by the snow. Before the fields have finished, before the Christmas tree, wonder upon wonder will arrive to me.
Love is like magic, and it always will be. For love still remains life's sweet mystery. Love works in ways that are wondrous and strange, and there's nothing in life that love cannot change. Love can transform the most commonplace into beauty and splendor and sweetness and grace. Love is unselfish, understanding and kind, for it sees with its heart and not with its mind. Love is the answer that everyone seeks. Love is the language that every heart speaks. Love can't be bought. It is priceless and free. Love, like pure magic, is a sweet mystery.
Good people all this Christmas time, consider well and bear in mind what our good God for us has done in sending his beloved Son. With Mary holy we should pray to God with love this Christmas day. In Bethlehem upon that morn there was a blessed Messiah born. Near Bethlehem did shepherds keep their flocks of lambs and feeding sheep, to whom God's angel angels did appear, which put the shepherds in great fear. Prepare and go, the angel said, to Bethlehem, be not afraid, for there you'll find this happy morn, a princely babe, sweet Jesus born. With thankful heart and joyful mind, the shepherds went this babe to find. And as God's angel had foretold, they did our Saviour Christ behold. Within a manger he was laid, and by his side the Virgin Maid, attending on the Lord of life, who came on earth to end all strife. Good people, all this Christmas time, consider well and bear in mind what our good God for us has done in sending his beloved Son. With Mary holy we should pray to God with love this Christmas day. In Bethlehem upon that morn there was a blessed Messiah born. There was a blessed Messiah born.
A great mouth blew a breath through Moore Street and stirred scents into the air to cloud the damp, warm darkness through which Christmas crowds poured. Mouths opened on roared laughter, and eyes squinted in the wind and opened again, impatient. Faces drew back from the sudden barbs of holly and were pressed against shop fronts from which turkeys and geese hung. White-bibbed dealers with strange-shaped earrings and high-buttoned boots, and without their shawls, roared from behind mountains of fruit and vegetables, and soft glittering tinsel wound like frost around multicoloured balloons netted by showers of streamers. The mysterious dark of Christmas trees was entered by hands and elbows and showered the ground with needles. And overhead, fairy lights and paper chains transformed the night. It was cheaper to buy in Moore Street, the last thing Christmas Eve. The shoppers and dealers let food and fruit and meat go at less than half the price, and without bargaining. Bargains could be bought. In O'Connell Street, the wind, with soft, wet snow on it, bit into Mrs. Baines and wet the heads of Neddo and Tucker Tommy, driving them from the carol singers and through the crowds swarming over the wide street through which they tried to hurry now in their eagerness to be home. Up Westmoreland Street they went, past the cafe where Babby worked, which they stopped to peer into, past Trinity College, dark and outrageously Protestant in its gloomy withdrawal, and behind its defence of black iron railings, and into Grafton Street, lined on either side with glittering, expensive shops, before which they began to dawdle. For the length of it they forgot they were cold, mesmerised by what they saw, and remembered again only when they left it behind and saw the bare branches of the trees in St. Stephen's Green, stark against the dark sky. Back home, across the landing, Mr. Kinsella was reciting Dark Rosaleen, despite his wife's screams to put a sock in it. And the urn ran with blood through the supper, and Neddo's and Tucker Tommy's pleas for another bit of cake. And Spanish ale gave Ireland hope when Mrs. Baines had got them ready for bed. They hung clean socks up on the line and put into the toes as payment for anything that Father Christmas might leave, the penny each that Babby gave them. Then gazed with momentary awe up the chimney after the trail of steam from the pudding in the black saucepan. "Do you think he'll come?" Tucker Tommy asked Babby. She laughed as she caught him up in her arms, and Nedo forgot about the 2 pink white sugar Santa Clauses and the 2 white net Christmas stockings alongside the game of snakes and ladders which he had seen at the bottom of the tin trunk and about which he said nothing. "Of course he will," she said. Christmas was passed over in a wave of opulence, suspending for a few hours the spectre of want and hardship in the lane, as puddings were shared and sips of wine carried in small glasses from room to room, and people discussed or displayed the things that they had been able to manage, marvelling at the ingenuity of those who had contrived not only food, but clothes as well. "And the style of some," as Mrs. Kinsler remarked, when she watched Mrs. Chance go off to 11 o'clock Mass, wearing a new green coat and a navy blue straw hat that would take the eyes out of your head.
One side of the potato pits was white with frost. How wonderful that was, how wonderful. And when we put our ears to the paling post, the music that came out was magical. The light between the ricks of hay and straw was a hole in heaven's gable. An apple tree with its December glinting fruit we saw. Oh, you Eve, where the world attempted me to eat the knowledge that grew in clay, and death the germ within it. Now and again, I can remember something of that gay garden that was childhood's. Again, the tracks of cattle to a drinking place, or a green stone lying sideways in a ditch. Any common sight, a transfigured face, a beauty the world had not touched. My father played the melodeon outside of our gate. There were stars in the morning east, and they danced to his music. Across the wild bogs, his melodeon called to Lennons and Callans, and as I pulled on my trousers in a hurry, I knew that some strange thing had happened. Outside in the cowhouse, my mother made the music of milking, and the light from her stable lamp was a star, and the frost of Bethlehem made it twinkle. Mass-going feet crunched the wafer ice on the potholes. Somebody wistfully twisted a bellows wheel. My child poet picked out the letters in silver on the grey stone, the wonder of a Christmas town land, the blinking glitter of a frosty dawn. Cassiopeia was over Cassidy's hanging hills. I looked, and 3 wind bushes rode across the horizon. The 3 wise kings. An old man passing said, "Can't he make it talk?" The melodeon. I hid in the doorway and tightened the belt on my box-pleated coat. I nicked 6 nicks in the doorpost with my penice big blade. There was a little one for cutting tobacco, and I was 6 Christmases of age. My father played the melodeon. My mother milked the cows. And I had a prayer like a white rose pinned on the Virgin Mary's blouse.
As the snow flies on a cold and grey Chicago morning, a poor little baby child is born in the ghetto, and his mama cries, 'cause if there's one thing that she don't need, it's another hungry mouth to feed in the ghetto. People, don't you understand? The child needs a helping hand, or he'll grow to be an angry young man someday. Take a look at you and me. Are we too blind to see? Do we simply turn our heads and look the other way? Well, the world turns as a hungry little boy with a runny nose plays in the street as the cold wind blows in the ghetto. As his hunger burns, so he starts to roam the streets at night, and he learns how to steal and he learns how to fight in the ghetto. Then one night in desperation, the young man breaks away. He buys a gun, he steals a car, he tries to run, but he don't get far, and his mama cries. As a crowd gathers round an angry young man face down in the street with a gun in his hand in the ghetto. Now as the young man dies on a cold and grey Chicago morning, another little baby child is born in the ghetto. And his mama cries.
The air of the room chilled his shoulders. He stretched himself cautiously along under the sheets and lay down beside his wife. One by one, they were all becoming shades. Better pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion than fade and wither dismally with age. He thought of how she who lay beside him had locked in her heart for so many years that image of her lover's eyes when he had told her that he did not wish to live. Generous tears filled Gabriel's eyes. He had never felt like that himself towards any woman, but he knew that such a feeling must be love. The tears gathered more thickly in his eyes, and in the partial darkness he imagined he saw the form of a young man standing under a dripping tree. Other forms were near. His soul had approached that region where dwell the vast hosts of the dead. He was conscious of but could not apprehend their wayward and flickering existence. His own identity was fading out into a grey, impalpable world. The solid world itself, which these dead had one time reared and lived in, was dissolving and dwindling. A few light taps upon the pane made him turn to the window. It had begun to snow again. He watched sleepily the flakes, silver and dark, falling obliquely against the lamplight. The time had come for him to set out on his journey westward. Yes, the newspapers were right. Snow was general all over Ireland. It was falling on every part of the dark central plain, on the treeless hills, falling softly upon the bog of Allen and farther westward, softly falling into the dark, mutinous Shannon waves. It was falling too upon every part of the lonely churchyard on the hill where Michael Fury lay buried. It lay thickly drifted on the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate, on the barren thorns. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe, and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end upon all the living and the dead.
Like somebody who sees things when he's dreaming, and after the dream lives with the aftermath of what he felt, no other trace remaining. So I live now. For what I saw departs and is almost lost, although a distilled sweetness still drops from it into my inner heart. It is the same with snow the sun releases, the same as when in wind the hurried leaves swirl round your ankles, and the shaking hedges that had flopped their catkin cufflace and green sleeves are sleet-whipped bare. Dawn light began stealing through the cold universe to County Meath, over weirs where the Boyne water, fulgent, darkling, turns its thick axle, over rick-sized stones, millennia deep in their own unmoving and unmoved alignment. And now, the planet turns earth-brow and templed earth. The crowd grows still in the wired-off precinct of the burial mounds. Flight 104 from New York, audible as it descends on schedule into Dublin. Boyne Valley Centre car park already full, waiting for seedling light on roof and windscreen. And as in illo tempore, people marked the king's gold dagger when he plunged it into the hilt in unsown ground to start the work of the world again, to speed the plough and plant the riddled grain. We watch through murk and overboiling cloud for the milted glow of sunrise, for an eastern dazzle to send first light like share shine in a furrow, steadily deeper, farther available, creeping along the floor of the passage grave to backstone and capstone, holding its candle to the world inside the astronomic cave.
In the bleak midwinter, frosty wind made moan. Art stood hard as iron, water like a stone. worship night and day, a breast full of milk and a manger full of hay, enough for him whom angels fall down before. The ox and ass and camel which adore. What can I give him, poor as I am? If I were a shepherd, I would bring a lamb. If I were a wise man, I would do my part. Yet what can I give him? Give my heart, give my heart.
Now as I was young and easy, under the apple boughs about the lilting house, and happy as the grass was green, the night above the dingle starry, time let me hail and climb, golden in the heydays of his eyes. And honoured among wagons, I was prince of the apple towns, and once below a time, I lordly had the trees and leaves trail with daisies and barley, down the rivers of the windfall light. And as I was green and carefree, famous among the barns about the happy yard, and singing as the farm was home, in the sun that is young once only, time let me play, and be golden in the mercy of his means. And green and golden, I was huntsman and herdsman, the calves sang to my horn, the foxes on the hills barked clear and cold, and the Sabbath rang slowly in the pebbles of the holy streams. All the sun long it was running, it was lovely, the hayfields high as the house, the tunes from the chimneys, it was air and playing, lovely and watery and fire, green as grass. And nightly, under the simple stars as I rode to sleep, the owls were bearing the farm away. All the moon long I heard, blessed among stables, the nightjars flying with the ricks, and the horses flashing into the dark. And then to awake, and the farm, like a wanderer white with the dew come back, the cock on his shoulder, it was all shining, it was Adam and maiden. The sky gathered again, and the sun grew round that very day. So it must have been after the birth of the simple light, in the first spinning place. The spellbound horses walking warm out of the whinnying green stable, onto the fields of praise. And honoured among foxes and pheasants, by the gay house under the new-made clouds, and happy as the heart was long in the sun, borne over and over, I ran my heedless ways, my wishes raced through the house-high hay, and nothing I cared at my sky-blue trades, that time allows in all his tuneful turning, so few and such morning songs, before the children green and golden follow him out of grace. Nothing I cared in the lamb-white days, that time would take me up to the swallow-thronged loft by the shadow of my hand, in the moon that is always rising, nor that riding to sleep I should hear him fly with the high fields, and wake to the farm forever fled from the childless land. Oh, as I was young and easy in the mercy of his means, time held me green and dying, though I sang in my chains like the sea.
The phantom led Scrooge to an obscure part of the town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its situation and its bad repute. The ways were foul and narrow, the shops and houses wretched, the people half naked, drunken, slipshod, ugly. Alleys and archways, like so many cesspools, disgorged their offences of smell and dirt and life upon the struggling streets. And the whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth and misery.
Far in this den of infamous resort was a low-browed beetling shop below a penthouse roof, where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. Sitting in among the wares he dealt in, by a charcoal stove made of old brick, was a grey-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, and smoking his pipe with all the luxury of calm retirement.
Well, Mrs. Dilber, what have you got for me?
Something a dead man don't need, old Joe. Or if he wanted to keep him after he was dead, wicked old screw. Why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying, gasping at his last, alone, by himself.
The truest word that ever was spoke, I'm sure. It's a judgment on him. Now,
open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain.
Very well. I always give too much to the ladies. It's a weakness of mine. And that's the way I ruin myself. Now, what do you call this? Bed curtains.
Bed curtains.
You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him still lying there?
Yes, I do. Why not?
You were born to make your fortune, Mrs. Dilber.
I certainly shan't hold my hand when I can get anything in it by reaching out. For the sake of such a man as he was, I promise you, Joe. Don't drop that all upon the blankets now.
His blankets?
Whose else's do you think? He ain't likely to take cold without them, I dare say.
I hope he didn't die of anything catching. Hey.
No. Don't you be afraid of that. No, I ain't so fond of him that I'd loiter about him for such things if he did. You may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find an hole in it. It's the best he had, and a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call wasting of it?
Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was foolish enough to do it, but I took it off again. This is the end, you see. He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive to profit us when he was dead.
I'm delighted to know that this year the Christmas Carol event is going ahead again, despite the very difficult circumstances in which we find ourselves. Like last year, it has to be online rather than in person. But I would like to thank everybody involved in this event. I'd like to thank all the actors who are giving their time free of charge to raise funds for our work with homeless people. I'd like to thank everyone who is involved in organising this event. I know there's a huge amount of work goes into organising it. And I'd like to thank the parish and Father Fergal in particular for facilitating this event for us. You are raising a substantial amount of money to aid us in our work with homeless people. Some of our services get no state funding. Some of them get very inadequate state funding. And we depend on the fundraising, which the public and yourselves do, to enable us to maintain the services that we have and to continue the services that we have. We have housed this year about 1,400 people, and we have more apartments coming on stream before Christmas, where we can give a homeless person or family the key of the door and say, this is your home now for the rest of your life. And that's the best Christmas present we could offer to anybody. And for many homeless people, it's a dream come true. So that requires the funding that we get from the public, and it requires the funding that you raised today. So I want to thank all of you involved in this, and I want to thank everybody who contributes to this fund. We very much appreciate it. We very much need it. And we value your support very, very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Drüben hinterm Dorfe steht ein Leiermann und mit starren Fingern dreht was kann. Barfuß auf dem Meiser wankt hin und her. Und sein kleiner Teller bleibt ihm immer leer. Und sein kleiner Teller bleibt ihm immer leer. Keiner mag ihn hören, keiner sieht ihn an. Und die Hunde knurren den alten Mann.
und lässt es gehen, alles wie es will. Dreht und seine Leier steht ihm nimmer still. Dreht und seine Leier steht ihm nimmer still. Wunderlicher Alter, soll ich mit dir gehen? Willst zu meinen Liedern deine